So let me be quite clear. The talks, the mediation to effort the release of civilian hostages, possibly a prisoner exchange at this point, have not collapsed, correct?
No, I believe they are still going. The task force is still working on it. And as I said, it's becoming more and more difficult with the current escalation. This escalation that is happening right now, you know, one of the most terrible escalations that have happened in the region for a really long time, is making it certainly more difficult. As I said, on the logistical side of it, of just moving people during a landing incursion and the increased bombardment, but also from a political side, of course, you know, mediation only works when you have calming periods. Under this kind of conflict, this kind of confrontation between both sides, it becomes more difficult, but it's still ongoing, and we can't give up. Beyki, I can tell you that really we can't give up on this on all sides. Nobody in the region can afford to give up on this and just leave it to the military people to decide what happens in the future.
What can you provide us in terms of the details of these talks?
Well, obviously, Beyki, I can't get into the details of this because our main concern now is getting the hostages to their families and making sure that this mediation succeeds, and that would be very difficult, you know, right now if we share a lot of the details. But as you heard today from Prime Minister Netanyahu and from the spokesperson of Hamas, we are talking around the idea of more hostages coming out. We're talking around the idea of a prisoner exchange. We are optimistic that the talks are heading more towards all civilian hostages, but obviously it's a fluid situation on the ground. We still don't know what will happen.
Do we know how many civilian hostages there are held in Gaza at present?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Anybody knows. We have our numbers that are we're discussing, you know, through the lists we get from various countries about the foreign citizens who are held hostage. We have the numbers from the Israeli side. We have numbers from the Palestinian side. But these numbers are not necessarily, you know, always the same. But the important thing here is that both sides acknowledge that the civilian hostages need to go out immediately, and both sides, and especially Hamas on this, has said very clearly that they are willing to let the civilian hostages go out. So we have to work towards that as soon as possible.
We know that Hamas have been pressing for at least the release of Palestinian women and teenagers held in Israeli prisons. We heard Benjamin Netanyahu say today that that had been discussed in the war cabinet. Can I press you on whether you believe that that exchange could be for women and children being held in Gaza by Hamas? And if so, are we talking around sort of 50, 60 people here?
Obviously, Beyki, we've been talking about day one about our priorities in this. It is our main goal and our end goal to release all the hostages and get them back to their families. But obviously, when you put it and when you prioritize it, you start with the women and children, you start with the foreigners and the civilians, and then you go to the rest of the hostages. And obviously, if we were going to prioritize, we're going to start with the women and children. But I believe that right now the discussions encompass, you know, the idea of civilian hostages all together.